Hello, I'm a Mac.
And I'm a PC.
Welcome to the Real Tech Podcast, bringing you the real talk about the tech of tomorrow that you should adopt today to improve your life. And now, here are your hosts, Tony and Raphael.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of the Real Tech Podcast. This is where it all starts for us. The first podcast is always the worst podcast. I've gone back and listened to, the first one on other podcasts I've done, and it's always the worst. So, but we are going to try and make this one great. Okay, so the Real Tech Podcast is where we will bring you the real talk about tech of tomorrow that you should adapt today to improve your life. I am on my own little personal journey of trying to automate as much stuff in my house as possible. And we'll get to how I'm trying to do that in later shows and things like that. But we thought we'd start today because Apple had an announcement. And I'm using my air quotes because I don't know what they were announcing. It only took them an hour. That was the shortest Apple press conference I've ever seen, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly,
it was wham, bam, thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, it was kind of hard to understand why this didn't come out in a press release. And it's funny because a lot of the larger tech media was talking about that Apple may be deciding whether to host this event or not. Those were some of the rumors before the event. Yeah. And then I think they decided to go ahead with it because of they saw it as a platform to talk about Apple right before, with tying it all into the encryption and the FBI debate that's been going on. So they saw it as a convenient time to go ahead and talk about the good things that Apple does within the community as a corporate, entity, and kind of put themselves in the best light that they could in that debate. And using this, the new iPhone launch that they launched today and things of that nature to really cement that in people's minds.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think Tim Cook did a great job on ABC News with, what's his name, David Meir or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think he really handled that interview really well because, listen, David was after one thing and one thing only.
Yeah, it was a gotcha.
Yeah. And, he kept asking the same question with different twists on it. And ultimately, Tim just kept saying the same thing over and over and over again. I was like, Pete and repeat and rinse and repeat and Pete and repeat. It was the same thing.
I've spoken to you about this before, and I told you I thought that very few politicians could have performed better than Tim Cook did in that. And I watched the whole interview. It was like 30 minutes long. I think on TV they showed less. Yeah. But if you watch the full interview, every single answer Tim Cook gave was, in my opinion, spot on. And, everyone has their varying degree of opinions on this issue. But at the end of the day, I just think that Apple actually, not just because of marketing, which, of course, they're doing it for that reason as well, to say that they're not Google is the implication. They're trying to be, protect your data. They're trying to keep your data safe. So there is a marketing aspect to what Apple's doing. But I still also believe that they happen to be right on the issue as well. I mean, and it is a little weird to have Apple coming out on stage today. Tim Cook used the first, I would say, 9 minutes of the show to actually say that they are in an awkward position facing up against the government. And it's, I don't know, I just think back of all the happy times, under Steve Jobs and all this. Yeah. Now we have Tim Cook standing, and Tim Cook naturally is a little bit more reserved, a lot more reserved than Steve Jobs.
Yeah. Steve would have gone batshit crazy. He would have gone bonkers. He would have said, listen, if you step 1 foot on my property, I'll kill you. There's no way Steve Jobs would have ever tolerated any of that.
No, it would have been very different with Steve Jobs, there's no doubt. Yeah. And even handling this for sure. But I still think that what Tim Cook has done, I commend him on this for sure. And I just saw on my phone breaking news that the FBI is attempting to crack the iPhone without Apple's help, which I think is actually a win for Apple. At least the way the story sounds today, and the fact that the news came out now, obviously right after the event.
Yeah.
I just think that this was time. The FBI really doesn't seem to have a great position going into the hearing that I believe is tomorrow. So
listen, I said this to you, and it says, if they hire enough smart people, they could probably get into it. If they hire super geniuses and spend a couple $1,000,000 of taxpayers' dollars, they can get into these phones. But what do they expect to find in there once they get in there? What do they think? Listen, the people are dead. You can't send them to jail. What are you going to get? I understand that these people probably want closure of, why they did it. We'll never know why they did that. They're dead. They can't tell us. So, go at it, government. Unless you hire some really, really, really super smart people, I don't think they're going to get in there,
Yeah.
So, we'll see. We'll see what comes of that. But I'm almost, hoping the government doesn't get in there, because if they do, well, guess what? They got the key then.
Yeah.
They got the magic key then to every.
And there's some people that believe that the NSA already does have these keys, but obviously if the FBI could have access to it whenever they want it without having to do some lengthy process, that's really what they want. They want it to be, something where they don't have to spend money and time and resources in order to crack whatever phone they want. And right now they're using this terrorist device, but obviously they would want to get your data for even pettier crimes than this. And there's a lot of reasons why I don't think that that's necessarily a good thing, especially in this country.
It may be a good time to buy some more Apple stock, because I'm sure the FBI is trying to get a large amount of phones to start testing this process on, because they're not going to do it on the phone they're trying to get into. They're going to, put some data on some phones and lock them up, and then, give them to these people people's companies, I don't know, to try and crack these things. So, I'm sure they're going to go through a couple of dozen, maybe 20, 30 phones. So maybe a good time to buy some Apple stock, because there may be some large FBI sales.
The last thing I'll say on this is that I just feel the government's always behind when it comes to technology. We've seen it, with things like the healthcare website and things of that nature. But here, Apple is already talking about encrypting iCloud and maybe even encrypting iMessage going forward. So I think that the government will continually be chasing a moving target, and will never really catch up to these tech companies. So that's why I think they're making this push right now, because they feel like they can do it now. But pretty soon, I just think that this encryption debate is just going to be moot. I think So I titled this podcast "The Subdued Apple Press Conference," and one of the reasons for that was that I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of announcements as soon as after the first intro with Tim Cook talking about security and encryption and the FBI debate. We went into conservation efforts, and then later we went into care kit, which we'll get into a little bit later. But I just knew from that beginning sequence that there wasn't really going to be a lot of meat on the bones if you were looking for consumer devices in this event.
Yeah. But we should also talk about that April 1st, Apple is celebrating their 40th anniversary. And they did have a 40 years and 40 seconds little promo that they did before Tim Cook took the stage.
The ad looks like your shirt.
Yeah, exactly. And it was good. I kind of liked it. I was like, oh yeah, I had one of those. I had one of those.
No, honestly, my biggest takeaway from the event, which is not speaking very highly of this event, but my biggest takeaway was the ad.
Yeah.
Because it was funny. Tim Cook said, we don't normally look back, but we're doing it because it's our 40th, which is Apple's biggest problem right now, is that everybody's looking for the next big thing, as Samsung likes to put it. But Apple doesn't really have the next big thing just yet. They thought it was going to be watch, and I still think the watch is going to be bigger than most people are predicting it's going to be long term. But it's never going to be the iPhone, right? So, and neither is, the iPad really hasn't been, which I think partly of that is because Steve Jobs is no longer with us, and so the focus on the iPad has kind of dwindled. Yeah. Now they're doing it as a business side. They're like looking for ways to fix the iPad. But I see Apple looking for the next big thing and not really necessarily having.
Yeah, it's going to be the car, the Apple car. I think it's going to be the next big thing. So talk about the first thing there, Raf.
So introducing Liam, I think Liam is a pretty amazing little robot. It's kind of an armed
It's like a
robotic,
Wally.
like Wally. But so it's kind of like those armed robots you've seen build cars and things of that nature, or actually build your iPhone. And in this case, it's actually made to pick apart your iPhone once you've traded it in and it's no longer, it's basically an obsolete tech device. Because at the end of the day, that's one of the biggest problems with Apple's messaging around conservation is that a lot these devices, especially Apple, which is trying to make them thinner and thinner and thinner, and the iPhone 7 will be even thinner. It becomes much harder to pick apart, either to fix it, which is a big problem for consumers, but also later on when you go to recycle it, how do you get these components apart? And Apple clearly has found a way. So they created this robot, which they were happy to say was designed in California.
Right.
And I'm sure manufactured in
in some other country.
But this Liam robot was after the ad that played in the first few seconds. This was definitely the most impressive thing.
Yeah. I wanted to see more of that, and I want to know how many of those things they have.
That it would be the interesting part. It felt like this was just like an initiative that they've started. So I don't think that they've really got this completely, like they're actually using hundreds of these, but it'd be interesting to know that for sure.
I mean, it takes it apart, it takes pictures of things, it divides the parts up nicely.
I think that's the most impressive thing was this, how the way it literally will rotate and scan it for you.
Yeah.
And like the device itself, and then pick apart each individual part. Yeah. And they touted it like, this metal can then be used to do solar panels, and this, which obviously the final use cases we'll never know. But the reality is that it is kind of neat that they're doing it. And then,
they certainly can recycle and put it back into their own production.
That's what she at her last sentence in that whole statement mentioned that, and I thought that was very interesting because could they sell a recycled iPhone, and maybe actually it'd be more expensive, maybe it'd be a high end iPhone, like a premium device. Selling it to people that are, green conscious and things of that nature, that may be looking to invest in something like that.
Well, I would think that the metal could certainly be taken off, sent back to their metal manufacturer, and put back into the metal process. I know they're using a special aluminum, as what's his name would say, but I'm pretty sure they're probably putting some of that back into the production process to make their aluminum alloy.
I'm not even gonna attempt it.
What's his name? I can't even think of his name.
Johnny Ives.
Yeah, Johnny Ives. So I would think they're doing glass may be a little bit more harder to recycle. You got to melt it down and do other stuff with it, and then can it be turned back into this high tech Gorilla Glass? I don't know. I think maybe once you melt it down, it loses its special properties of being able to be dropped off a 20-story building and still survive. It's got like Superman powers. I was just watching some stuff today, and people are having problems with their Samsung 7s. They're cracking fairly easily.
Yeah, I mean, before I moved to the iPhone 6, when Apple decided that big screens were actually, in style.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to switch over. I used to have Samsung devices, and I always told my mother, I'm like, I could literally throw this across the room in a case. But throw it across the room and have nothing happen to it if it hits the ground, which I don't recommend for anyone to do, but I've done it before. And as soon as I got the iPhone, the first time I dropped it, I guess everybody probably has this story, but it just pancaked right on the ground, on asphalt. And of course, it didn't land on its back. So shattered screen, first time I dropped my iPhone.
Holy mackerel.
First time I owned an iPhone, first time I dropped it. So that was my...
With or without a case?
It was not... I didn't have a case, to be fair. I just had this, the leather case, which is basically not having a case. Yeah. And that's why I always get Apple Care with my devices because of that reason. Because I at this point they're so big that I feel like it's too cumbersome to have a major case on them.
Yeah.
And I usually
unless you buy an outer box.
Yeah, I like outer boxes and life proof as well, though they're expensive. But I tend not to.
They add so much bulk to the phone, though.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Why are you buying something this thin if you're going to put it in an outer box?
Yeah.
You might as well go get something from the 1980s.
Yeah.
Like a Motorola or StarTAC flip phone.
But Samsung, like everybody's been highly touting the new Samsung Galaxy.
Yeah.
Is it the S7? Yes. So I went to see it in Best Buy, and I love the device. Looks beautiful. It just looks.
Yeah, the OLED screen is gorgeous.
Yeah, that's the stunning feature of it, and that's something that Apple is rumored to copy next year, or the year after. But outside of the problem that I see is that they still have a glass back. They have a Gorilla Glass back, and that's gonna shatter.
Yeah.
And honestly, I like that it's light. There is something good to it being light, but I actually prefer, and not because I own it, but I just having seen both and used both, I prefer the aluminum back.
The aluminum.
Yeah, because it just feels weightier, and it just feels like a tech device. Whereas the other one just feels. I hate to use the word cheap because these are not cheap devices by any stretch of the imagination. Even Samsung's, which is cheaper, is nowhere near anything I would consider cheap. But at the same time, it just doesn't give that weightiness that I look for in a tech device. Yeah. And something that Apple has truly perfected. Now, that being said, it's clear that Samsung is starting to understand that manufacturing and design, which they've always had great on televisions and things of that nature, they're starting to really apply it on their phones and really starting to tamper down on some of the crazy flares that they used to have on their phones. So I think they're catching up to Apple on their design chops as far as hardware. Yeah. So that's why Apple really, with the iPhone 7 and the next phones, has to really start picking up their game.
So when do you think we'll see a day that we'll see no metal or no stuff up here?
Yeah. So
everything will be one giant screen. The camera will be built in behind the glass. The fingerprint will just be part of the glass where down at the bottom you just put.
Yeah, I don't foresee that now for at least 2 years because the rumor is that they're switching it to OLED maybe next year, maybe the year after. Yeah. And I don't, until there's a big redesign with the actual screen, I don't see them tampering with that part, which is sad because that's my biggest gripe with the iPhone is the bezels are huge. I do think that this top bezel will get reduced this year, but I don't foresee the bottom bezel being much smaller than it is right now.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to some other stuff that was announced. So, and this is really not so much for consumer. This next announcement, I mean, we get nothing from this yet. But they also came up with something called Care Kit, which was a follow-up to their Home Kit. And they're giving this to a lot of different medical research companies, obviously. And the use case that they were showing is, when you get discharged from a hospital, typically a doctor or the discharge nurse gives you a piece of paper with these things that you should do or not do, once you're released from a hospital after procedures or surgeries. And with this Care Kit, it is on your phone, and it can be dynamic, meaning that each day it tells you what you have to do, and then you mark those things off, and your doctor can see that. You can monitor your temperature, your blood pressure, all those kind of things, and then if something changes, the doctor can change your care on the fly, and it'll update automatically on your phone. And I'm assuming that you give these doctors permission to do these things, obviously. There's probably some privacy, I would want some kind of security and privacy issues with that. But
I think that's why Apple chose to talk about Care Kit today, is that this was another tie-in with the whole FBI encryption, why you need privacy.
Right.
So I think the things they chose today were very calculated, of course.
Yeah. So I thought that was very interesting because, there are times that, you're at home and you're reading the sheet and you're going, does he mean this or does it mean that? Does it mean this? And, you may not know. And if you don't tick those things off, then the doctor goes, well, maybe I need to call or follow up. So, yeah, I think something like that. They're also doing some stuff with Parkinson's research and a care app. I think that's great. They mentioned things like diabetics. I think technology does have a really good place in the medical field. I think that's where it maybe could do the best good. The fact that I can play, Trivia Crack on my phone may not be the best use of my technology. But if it can, help my health, I think that's probably a better use of the technology.
Yeah, and I think that's something fundamentally different between the Apple under Tim Cook and under Steve Jobs. Under Steve Jobs, the focus was the technology itself, whereas now it seems like Apple is trying to shift to what can this technology do for you. And actually, it kind of goes in with what our motivations are for this podcast. We really want to focus on not just the tech, which today we're kind of doing a special here talking about Apple, but long term, we want to see this podcast really just delve into the themes of what real tech can do to improve your daily life, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters to people is not just we all love to talk tech, but at the end of the day, what is it doing to improve your life? And in this case, Apple's trying to, make a clear message that they see a role in the healthcare industry. And it's like you say, I don't think the world today is anywhere close to what it will look like in the healthcare. I think that's maybe the next big thing might come from the healthcare industry, because Apple just talked about it. This Parkinson's disease research app, they put it out there with HealthKit, and literally, I think it was, I forgot the amount of days they said, but it was like almost instantaneously, it became one of the most subscribed to research documents that they had ever done, because so many people subscribed to it because it was available on their iPhone.
Yeah.
And that availability, because so many people have these devices. And then, of course, because all these devices have sensors. And of course, the reason why I still, and I know you laughed when I said it, but the reason I see Apple Watch being big in the future is because of the sensors that will be there. Apple was long rumored to have included more sensors, but then, I think they leaked some data that to the press that they didn't do it because of FDA approvals and the process. Right. And all that. But there's already a company that just this week, I forgot the name of the company, but they released a band that has an EKG monitor that you can put to your Apple Watch. And the potential just there, let's say you were visiting a public theme park, let's say like Disney, and you had an EKG monitor. Potentially, if you had it enabled to share that data, perhaps, if you were no longer, you were having a stroke or something of that nature, it could alert a healthcare individual at the theme park or an emergency individual to come out to your location, and maybe they would have data based on your GPS location about where the nearest defibrillator is to help you out quicker. So it's just the ways going forward that only Apple and these big companies can really dream of and really have an impact on. And now the fact that there's so many devices in people's hands with so many sensors, and going forward, there's only going to be more. So,
there's been a couple people that have said, in other podcasts and videos and news things that I've listened to, that the Apple Watch does have some of the better sensors for detecting your heart rate, your blood pressure, your how much you sweat or whatever. And the calories lost is not, that's not scientific. That's just based on activity.
Yeah.
And they do some math equation, and boom, they go, we think you lost this based on your age, your height, your weight, your heart rate, and things like that. But, a lot of people saying that is the better way to go. Now, another thing, too, was, talk about the medical stuff. A long, long time ago, in a galaxy far away, Google had something called medical records. And I had signed up for this, and obviously I didn't put in my real information or my real health information, because I was like, I don't know if I really trust Google yet with my medical.
Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, so I was doing it, and just filling out different aspects of it. But the whole concept was, and I think this is still a good concept, and I hope maybe somebody does it because it really makes sense. If you go to, say you have a general physician that you go to, and he has your medical records of what he's done or seen with you, then you get into maybe an accident or something, and you go to the hospital. Well, they know nothing about you. You have to tell them all the medicines you're on, the different doctors that you see, all your different conditions. But if your medical records were, and I'm using my air quotes, mobile in a fashion, or in the cloud, where you would sign on to an app, get a PIN number, and say to the doctor, here, this is what you can have access to with this PIN number, that would be great. Because then the doctor would go, all right, I can see you have a history of this, and this, and you're on these medicines, and you've had these different procedures. He'd have the doctor's names, their phone numbers, when they were done, yada, 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 and then you could make a more informed medical emergency decision about your care and your treatment. Not have to kind of pull these puzzle pieces together. Now, that's assuming, A, you're awake, you're alive, you're breathing, and you can speak to the doctor. If you just are rolled in on, on a gurney and you're not speaking, well, then the doctor really can't do anything. But you could maybe have some kind of way that, in case of an emergency, your records could be accessed,
Yeah, Apple has some sort of, like, you can create a medical ID under.
Yeah, but all right. So how do medical people get access to that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, well, we're gonna need to find that out.
I do know that like when you're emergency personnel show up, there is something they can access to see like I believe your medical history as far as like what pills and medications you can take and things of that nature. Because I know I believe my mother set it up for my grandfather. That's the extent of my knowledge on that. Because I'm so young and youthful.
Maybe I'm going to take my phone to an EMT and I'm going to say, can you get to my medical ID on here? Show me how, because I'd like to see it.
All right.
So, all right. So that's Care Kit. I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. And let me ask you this, Rap. Do you use your health app on your phone for anything?
I do, because I have the Apple Watch and I need to use the health app, so I do check it from time to time. My problem with it right now is that for Apple being such a design-focused company, and there's a lot of people, making criticisms of Apple's design lately, which really started with iOS 7 and the big changes then, and then iOS 9. Still, people didn't really like the modern changes. I did. I actually thought they chose a happy medium between Google's like fanciful UI and Microsoft's very, very modern UI, which I actually like Microsoft's take. But Apple's kind of like a happy medium, and definitely got away from the skeuomorphism, which a lot of people didn't like. But as far as the health app, I really don't find it very visually appealing. So there's a lot of apps, third-party apps, that just make it more fun to look at the numbers and really dive into the data. Now, I do think there have been a few improvements that were announced today in the iOS 9.3, which we'll get into later. But basically, for the health app, they now will show you third-party apps relevant to the data that you're looking at, which is great, because at the end of the day, the health app is really just trying to coalesce all these third parties into one single hub. Yeah. And that's really what it is. So at the end of the day, I think people
it's like a wallet, but with your health information.
Correct. But I think people are just going to end up using the third-party apps more than that app.
Yeah.
But when they want to look at overall all their data together, they'll go there. And that's what I use it for. So
I would really wish that Apple would make that health app something really robust. Sell me different accessories, a thing for my finger to take my blood pressure, a thing to put on my head for my temperature. I wouldn't mind buying those things.
Yeah, I mean,
if they were all tied to my little health app and I didn't have to get some third party app. But anyway,
Yeah, we could definitely do another podcast.
Yeah, we could do we could do a whole podcast about the health
because
stuff.
like my grandfather and my family, since as they get older in age,
Yeah.
we've been using Withings products.
Yeah.
Not a sponsor or anything of that nature, but I just
Right.
really love what they're doing in that space. They're doing exactly what you're saying, like putting different sensors from scales to blood pressure monitors, things of that nature. But it would be interesting to see Apple do first party stuff. But I think this goes to a larger issue. And even in this small press conference that they did here in the spring, Apple just has so many things they're working on. And yes, they're a big company and all that, but I sometimes wonder if their focus is as great as it once was.
Right.
Where you had one single iPhone, where you had an iPod. It's just very basic product lines. Now you have Apple delving into, recycling efforts and things of that nature. I mean, recycling goes back to their bottom line and things of that nature. So I understand that. But there's just, when they're getting into HealthKit and they're getting into all these things, but I think the reason they do all these things is that they're trying to sell now not just the phone. They're selling the ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
And really anything that they add on to that ecosystem makes it harder for you to switch platforms from one mobile device to another.
Right.
Which is bad for consumers, but at the end of the day, if you're in the world of Apple, it makes your life easier in that regard.
Yep, I agree.
So what did you think about the iPad Pro?
What?
Does it make you feel pro when they add the words pro to it?
All right, so it's just smaller. It's a 9.7-inch screen. I guess it makes sense. So I'm thinking applications in my head. I'm thinking for, doctors, people at, Disney, who carry these around. Yeah, I wouldn't want to carry around a 2-pound or, whatever the big one weighs. At least this is a pound. I wouldn't want something more than a pound strapped to my hand for 8 hours every day. If I was a doctor or something like that. So,
yeah, the iPad Pro, the larger one is mainly a desktop. But something you're going to want to have on the table.
Listen, I haven't used one, but the question I always ask myself when they put the word Pro on it, can it replace my desktop or my laptop? That's the question. Can I do everything I do on my laptop or my desktop on an iPad Pro? Well,
they did make one.
I know the comment. Go ahead.
Yeah, they talked about podcasters.
Yeah.
So they had nothing that Apple loves more than a dongle. So they had a little dongle that you can put into the iPad and connect a USB through there, and then therefore connect your USB mic. Which I don't know if that's they marketed it as if it had never been possible before, but there's been mics for iOS devices for a long time. So I don't know what the real difference is here. I'm guessing that since it's USB, it could be a little bit more professional than coming out of the Lightning cable. Although Apple's rumored in the next round of iPhones to come out with a higher codec for their audio for the Lightning port.
Yeah. So they're going to get rid of listen, they've been saying that the whole time that Lightning has been able to do audio, but there's just nothing that plugs into it that will do the audio.
Yeah, there's only like 3 or 4 headphones on sale, and they're all super duper expensive.
Yeah, so if we could get one of those, I'd love to test it and figure out. I'd like to get an old phone and take it apart and then test the connections and figure out which ones they are. Hey, that's just me. Maybe I should go, like to Gazelle.com and go buy an old one and tear it apart.
Yeah, as far as the iPad Pro 9.7 inch, I think the biggest news is that
I will like they did have a quote from John Lasseter, and that did make me happy.
Oh no, of course, I saw that. Gotta have Disney and Apple synergy at all times. But I think just having the Apple Pencil become something that I think they're lying right now. The truth is that the Apple Pencil will be available to use with everything. Yeah. I think it should be even available to use on the iPhone, and I think if they don't do it, it's a mistake. Mm-hmm. I think the Apple Pencil will eventually work with every device. and so they're kind of using that mystery of, oh, is it gonna work? Like last year they came out with the iPad Pro, and it makes it feel like you're getting some special device that nobody else will have access to the technology. Now, if you bought into the iPad Pro, it's not a bad device today. Right. It's still going to continue on being a good device, but now you could have gotten a much cheaper device that's also more portable and probably the real device, in my opinion.
Let's go back to Steve Jobs in the Wayback Machine, in the announcement of the first iPhone. He says, will you need a stylus? No. You have one of these. What do I need a pencil or a stylus for? If I can use this.
The funny thing is,
what is the pencil? I think is for the hardcore.
It is
drawing artist types. Period. End of story. I don't think anybody else needs that pencil.
I would say that I think more people than you.
Are you gonna swipe with the pencil, like if you're going through pictures or something, or?
You could, and obviously it's less, thumbprints on your screen, but that's not the real reason. But I do think more people than you would think would use it. If it's there, and that's really what
I think more people will lose it than use it.
That's for sure.
Because does it attach?
No, it does not.
See, that would be it for me.
Does it attach to the? Now I'm
I don't think it's magnetic like the Surface.
Like the Surface Pro.
Yeah. I don't think so.
I don't quite remember, to be honest.
The only thing that's magnetic is where it goes into the dock.
Yeah.
And that's it. I don't think the pencil stays on it. And I think that's everybody's complaint is, where do you put the pencil?
I think the pencil will become popular because there's going to be some innovative, in my opinion, apps around gaming where you're going to be able, because you see all these games that are physics-based, where you're like cutting a sheet of paper or you're doing all these, like building a bridge and all these things. And I just think that the precision you get out of a pencil will actually enable some new experiences that we maybe haven't thought of yet. So that's where I see the potential there, especially now, because the night, like you said, the larger iPad Pro was really, really for hardcore. Now, at least it's everybody that's going to buy an iPad today, for the most part, is going to get this iPad Pro because it's just replacing basically the old iPad line. Yeah. So if you're buying a new one, why not get the one with the latest and greatest technology? And this one not only, the Apple Pencil is probably the biggest thing, but it also has the 4 speakers that are also seen on the larger sibling, and a lot of other things like that. But I don't know. I think once it's there, I think people will like it. Now whether it's enough to sell me on the device, I don't see a lot of people rushing out to upgrade. But I do think that when people upgrade, they're not upgrading to an Android tablet because Android doesn't have the necessary tablet apps. So I think at the end of the day, the iPad's the only game in town. So over time, the Apple Pencil will be just another ubiquitous Apple product. Yeah.
This really, for me, it has to replace the laptop. If I'm going this big, I would rather have like an iPad mini. If I'm gonna, have something this big, it's got to replace my laptop.
I've heard a lot of people say that they would want, again, the Apple Pencil to work on an iPad mini because it would actually be great to just jot down ideas and things of that nature.
Sure.
Having this small device that you can literally take with you, because the iPad, the iPad 9.7-inch is portable, but you're not going to take it everywhere you go. Yeah. Whereas the mini, you can literally fit almost anywhere.
Yeah.
Even though I don't carry around man purses.
So just for perspective too, the 12.9, which is the regular iPad Pro, is $799, and the 9.7-inch iPad Pro is $599. That's a $200 difference. I don't know if it would get me. Maybe the $200 would make a difference to some people too.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not always size. Sometimes it's price.
No, and as far as if we're talking price, the biggest news for today would be to get the iPad Air 2. It's a great tablet. My mother owns one. She left it here.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, I'm very happy that she left it.
So what's the difference between the Pro and the Pad Air?
Basically that you don't have the screen that allows you to use the pencil, and then of course the 4 speakers as well. I mean, now you have stereo speakers. So because a lot of people say, and it's true, when you're watching it, like let's say Netflix, you'll tend to cover up a speaker now.
Yeah.
And so it's great to have speakers on both sides, but at the end of the day, that's the real thing for me, is that if you don't need the latest and greatest apps, because I do think there's going to be some interesting apps that are going to be based around the pencil that come out in the future. But if you don't need that, if you're just looking for a basic, not even basic, because the iPad Air 2 is a great, very speedy, and I would even say it's very much like the iPad Pro because it has the same software. You can still do the split view on the apps, which is what they're calling Pro. And I agree with you that that's not enough. What needs to be Pro is Pro applications.
Yeah.
And right now there's more because they've done deals with IBM and they've done deals with Adobe and things of that nature, but they really haven't brought a full suite of what you see on Windows. It's not like you're going to be running Steam, and playing a video game on your iPad. And then at the end of the day, Apple doesn't cater to that market usually, but the word Pro is definitely a misnomer.
Right. So if you buy, so just to give you some perspective to it pricing, the iPad Pro 9.7 inch, which is the new one, 32 gigs is $599 on Wi-Fi only. 128 gig is $749 Wi-Fi.
And here comes the big news.
Yep, and 256 for Wi-Fi is $899. Now, if you get the 9.7 iPad Pro, 32 gig Wi-Fi and cellular, now you'll have a cellular bill on top of that. That's $729, $879 for the 128, and then if you go to 256, it's $1,092. You might as well get the MacBook Pro. We're only a couple of $100 off, and you could get like the Fusion drive even at 256 gigs. And then you don't have a cell phone bill. And that, all right, it's a little bit heavier, but it certainly can go probably every place an iPad Pro can go.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather have the consumer have choice. I mean,
Well, that's 6 different choices and 6 different price ranges.
Yeah.
With 2 different kinds of connectivity, so, and 4 different colors. So you certainly have options.
Yeah, you have the options. You'll be there all day deciding. So what do you think about the 256? It's the first Apple iOS device that has 256, and I definitely think it's ushering in what the iPhone 7 will have later on this fall is a 256 version.
For a Pro device, it should start at 256 and just go higher. Really, I mean, I have a MacBook Pro, and I got the SSD drive with 256. I would have gone bigger if they had one, but they didn't. That's as high as they went. I would have gone 500 or terabyte. I would have paid a little bit extra for those, but I think if you're going to have Pro applications, you need some probably bigger storage. If you're going to be doing, podcasting, movies, and things like that, and photo apps, you can have thousands and thousands of photos, and yes, granted you could probably do them in the cloud or whatever, but I think for certain apps you're going to have them resident on your iPad to do them.
Yeah, I just don't. The one difference, Apple says it can replace, but I think what they're really saying is that they can replace an old Windows PC. They're not saying you can replace your MacBook, because what Apple really looks at it is that you're going to have basically a suite of their devices. You're going to have the watch, you're going to have the phone, you're going to have the MacBook, and of course the iPad. And so it's not, there are, and I agree, as a consumer, you think about like what entices you is being able to replace your device, because then you get to save money. But I just don't think Apple really looks at it that way. I do think Microsoft looks at it that way. I do think Microsoft with the Surface Pro is really trying to hit that segment and only that segment. They created the Microsoft Surface laptop basically as an homage to everyone who had been asking for a laptop, and to really just up the ante of their design work. But I really think that Microsoft is more focused on that particular sector, does a better job of really being a pro device, whereas Apple is still a consumer product that it has to work in conjunction with the others.
Right.
But I do like the whole mentality of the iPad Pro and this Pro notion. I know they do it for to sell you on the higher end devices, but I also think that at least it shows that Apple's at least thinking about the Pro market, because for a while Apple has kind of shunned the Pro market. You look at their software updates to Final Cut Pro and things of that nature that have been dumbed down by most most people would say, and so it's nice to at least them thinking, or at least pretending to think about the Pro market a little bit more, because honestly I think we tend to be the drivers of thought in the space, and where Pro people go is where the general consumer tends to follow.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the most boringest news that they had the entire thing. Was the iPhone SE, and I'm assuming the S and the E stands for Special Edition, or Super Idiot. This is a 16 gig. How big is this? Excuse me. How small is this again? This is the
5-inch device.
5-inch.
Yeah.
And this will start at $399 for the regular 16 gig, and then the 64 gig will start at $499. I guess I get the market they're going for, but so now they have the iPhone 6s in 2 different sizes, the iPhone 6 in 2 different sizes, and now the iPhone SE in its single smallest size. A lot of these phone companies today, LG, Samsung, whoever, Huawei or whatever, they're only making like two sizes, a small and a large. And
so Apple's being on Apple.
Yeah, and nothing else in between. And usually with those places, these different manufacturers, they're really starting small, like 16 gigs, and then having you, the consumer, add more storage with a micro SD card.
Mm-hmm. I think the problem with Apple is that their model focuses on the high end. So they're trying to sell these high end iPhone 6s Pluses where their margins are extremely high. But the reality is that you have Huawei and you have all these other Chinese vendors and coming into market with all these lower priced Android devices. And how does Apple continue to sell a phone that costs at the high end $1,000?
Yeah.
And really begins like somewhere around $600 to $700 if I'm not mistaken. So this just gets that entry point just really, really down to the bare minimum. And there's also a marginal benefit as well, which I'm sure is not a marginal benefit to these companies. But if you're a business and you're going to look to hand out phones, you're not going to be giving the iPhone 6s Plus or the iPhone 6. Now you're going to be giving out these iPhone special editions.
My company did.
Oh, you have a great company. And the SE didn't exist. But I do think that at a $400 price point, it's much easier to dish out in that sense. But
listen, this is I think this is a unique niche market. This is not. I don't think it's the target audience they're going for. I think the 6 and 6 Plus is really the target market. This is the baby they want to sell everybody.
Yeah.
Listen, my contract's up in July, and yes, I'm going to get the new one.
Woo!
Hopefully, they'll have their June announcement, and I'll be able to get the the iPhone 7, with all of the great features, with the new nothing down here for my earplug, and the inductive charging, and the LED screen. Hopefully my new phone will have all those things.
The funny thing is you call it the good new features, and I look at it just like you do, but everybody on the internet's like, you're taking away the headphone jack.
Take it. Listen, I can't. Let me think. Hold on. Let me think for a couple minutes here. Hold on. I can't think of the last time I used it. I really can't. My
Bluetooth headset?
My earphone jack. I really can't think of the last time I used it.
Well, I use it a lot, but I use it a lot less now that I have Bluetooth headphones.
Yeah, I really can't. All right, I bet you already did it, Ralph. Did you update to the iOS 9.3?
Yeah, I think my phone is now yellowish. It's got a disease that can only be cured with healthcare.
You already went into the yellow mode
Yeah, so
at 8:30 at night.
so it's
All
not
right,
gonna.
let's talk. Wait, let's talk about the features. So the iOS 9.3. Let's go down the list, and say what they are first, and then we'll kind of go back and talk about each one a little bit individually. So the first one they talked about was night shift, which we'll talk about. The next one, which I thought was useless, secure notes. After that, they talked about more personalized news. I don't know why. We kind of spoke about this briefly, where you can discover now third-party apps in the Health app, better CarPlay, which I'm looking forward to, and the iOS education, which was woohoo. So let's talk about night shift first, Ralph. So what do you have? What do you think? Do you think this is useful?
I do actually, but maybe I'm just buying into all this hype about, okay, so what night shift is about, just to explain
Yeah.
in some layman terms, is that there's blue light, and then there's like more natural light, that more warmish color light, which is what you get from sunset. And for so long, we were just based and tuned to these natural light patterns throughout looking at the sunrise and looking at the sunset. But our bodies now, when we use more and more tech devices, are getting this unnatural blue light at late hours of the night. And the theories seem to show that, yeah, you could definitely say it's a big difference.
Yeah.
So the change in temperature, in theory, is supposed to allow you to allow your mind to relax and to go to sleep better at night. So while they didn't actually say, they didn't make the claim that it will actually improve your sleep. They were like kind of skirting around it, and I think that's because of FDA regulations and things of that nature. But it's pretty obvious to a lot of people that are reading the studies that it does seem to at least improve around the margins your ability to go to sleep at night if you're using devices that do temper back the bluish white light.
Okay. Here's my theory. I call complete bullshit on the whole thing.
Yeah. Well,
I think some wife was trying to go to sleep and said to her husband, "Will you put down that damn phone and go to bed? That bright light is keeping me up. I can't sleep while you have that damn phone in your hand." I think that's how it all started.
And it may very well be non-scientific in that regard. It might be like that, but because I was actually, and it's something that we'll talk about in a future podcast, but I've been using the Kindle Paperwhite, and although it does help to use the Kindle Paperwhite when you're reading, it still has LED lighting, so it's not throwing as much light onto your face as an iOS device with a LCD or a Samsung device with an OLED screen. But it's still emitting light, and even putting it dimmer. Well, the real reason you do it is just so that your whole room isn't like a flashlight. And definitely this will, I think it'll help in that regard. I've always wondered why Apple doesn't allow, outside of going through like disability settings and things of that nature, you to dim the screen further than the preset that they have. I feel like there should be a way to dim the screen even further. There is a way, again, accessibility settings, which I call disability. I'm sorry, accessibility settings that you can invert your colors, which I've actually used a couple times, because when you're reading in bed or anywhere that's dark, the phone is just like this bright, like it's like the sun coming at you. And I do think it does affect sleep. I do think that people, you're playing your games like Tony likes to play. And and you get addicted to these games, and then on top of the addiction, which gets your mind going, the light I do think bothers as well. But yeah, I agree. We'll have to see real world. I'm going to be using it. I will be.
Yeah, I turn mine on too.
And it might just be a marketing thing, but you're seeing people like Hue, which another thing we'll talk about, I'm sure, at some point. the hue lights, they tell you rise in the morning with a natural, waking glow,
Right.
and the same thing with sunset. And whether it really does the medical, benefits or not, that remains to be seen. But I do think that there is some benefit overall, whether even if it's just a placebo effect, that you see the lights come on and dim at the right times, and you just know, okay, it's time to go to bed. I even a simple thing that I've seen happen to me is that I used to stay up way late because I've always been a night owl. But now I have my clock on the hue lights to turn them off at 2 o'clock.
Right.
And if I see that, my initial reaction is, oh my God, it's 2 o'clock, which I never thought that before. But now if the lights turn off, it's like this natural, like, oh, I should be going to bed.
Right.
And even that simple thing has helped me go to sleep. So if hue dimming, the color dimming or color temperature actually has an effect, I'd welcome it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we'll have to see how it goes. I usually don't. Once I'm done working in my office, I usually turn my ringer off and turn my phone upside down, and that's it. I don't go back. I don't answer it. I don't. It doesn't vibrate, doesn't buzz, and people are like, yeah, I tried calling you. But, yeah, sorry, you called me after 5 o'clock, and I don't answer my phone. If you want to get me, you get me on my house phone.
So that's what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Okay, the next announcement they made was for the 9.3, and I haven't gotten this to work yet. And I think I turned it on, but secure notes. And this would allow you to go into your settings, and rather than just being able to open up your notes willy-nilly, because we need them to be secure and private, you'd have to use your Touch ID or punch in a password if you don't have your Touch ID activated. So I tried doing it today and I couldn't get it to work. I don't know, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I tried making a new note, tried using my old notes. Maybe I need to restart my phone. I don't know. But I don't need any of those things to get into it. Now, the question I asked myself is, do we have a problem with people getting... If your phone is secured and you have it locked, you can't get to the notes anyway. Why do I have another layer of security just for my notes? Are people putting things in their notes that are...
I think the reason is because you could have your phone for a few moments unlocked. And like let's say I'm at a restaurant. Not that I've ever done this before, and I unlock my phone, and I leave it at the table, and I get up for it because somebody called me, and when I get back, somebody's stolen my phone. They could have grabbed it when the phone was open and unlocked before the screen locks again.
My notes would be the least of my problems.
Well, but that's fair. But maybe somebody's putting the secret nuclear plans.
My Apple Wallet with my credit cards would probably be a bigger concern of mine rather than what parking spot I parked at that I wrote in my notes.
No,
Magic 39.
Yeah.
I don't think, or what I need to pick up at the supermarket. I don't think anybody's going to be. And listen, that's me, but maybe people are putting more secure things in there. Maybe they're putting their Social Security numbers or credit card numbers to remember, or more secure.
Just as a personal example, not that I have the next big thing that I was going to be selling, but I've written, I jotted down ideas maybe for a company or a business or things of that nature, and I agree with you. Maybe it's mainly a placebo effect. Maybe we don't really need an extra layer of security, but you always feel better if you have that security. And the thing is, the way I see it, it's just so easy with Touch ID that I almost want it everywhere. I use it with the Withings Health app, and it has my data also secured there. And you're right, it is already secured with the first layer, but especially with the latest iPhone 6s Plus, the Touch ID sensor is so fast that that it really just I don't see it as an impediment.
Yeah. And I do like I do have some apps, obviously my security system, my keyboard lock, where rather than me logging in, I like using the Touch ID. That's a replacement. The Disney app 2 has it now. And I think the Touch ID is certainly better than trying to remember a password.
Yeah.
So I get it, but I just didn't see the reason or need.
Yeah,
I don't keep anything really crazy in my notes app, and maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm gonna start putting secret things in there, like my bank account number, just so I can lock it up.
Well, now I'll know where to look when I get your phone.
If you can get in my phone, you can have it. I also work for a company that requires a 10-digit password number, so good luck.
I'll ask the FBI.
Yeah, ask the FBI if they can help you. All right, the next item on the list was more personalized news. Now, I really don't use the news app probably as much, or if any. Maybe I'll use it once or twice a week if I'm somewhere and I'm bored. Let me go check the news. I just don't. I don't like the interface that much, and maybe it's the way the news is presented. I don't know. I just don't use the app enough to say I needed more personalized news. Apple.
I mean, I have a lot of like.
So what were they? So did you go in and see what the new personalizations were?
It's just a little bit more improvements around the For You stuff. I haven't really taken too much of a look at it yet,
Yeah.
but what I was gonna say is that I just don't see. This is my thing with Apple and spread it too thin. They're obviously doing it because they see this opportunity to control messaging, and Apple loves that. So why not have a hand in news? But it just doesn't feel right to me that Apple has a play in news at all. and it's fine that they've created this aggregator, but you and I both run news websites, so we know that their angling is a little bit more. I wouldn't say nefarious; it's too strong a word, but they definitely, they're not doing this just for your enjoyment. They're doing this to have control over the media in some regard, because just like Facebook and just like Google are doing with AMP and Facebook with instant articles, they want you to create content strictly for Apple, for the news app. And they have their own, features that they allow you as a news editor to use in order to create your content specific for this new Apple News app, which then can't really be repurposed anywhere else without doing some other work. And I don't like these silos. I kind of typically don't like them. Now, as far as the usability of the app, I think it's fine, but is Flipboard or a better Flipboard really what everyone is looking for on the iPhone? And really that gets to my bigger problem with iOS 9.3 is that when your biggest feature is night shift, that is a scary looking update. And I get it's a point update. They call it one of their biggest point updates. I don't buy that for a moment. Yeah. It may be as far as things that they.
I'm going to tell you what was probably buried in this that we're going to find out soon. More encryption.
In the actual news? Or you're saying in the phone, in the device?
Because there's always the hackers and the guys that delve into the code and go behind the doors.
Later, you're right.
Go back there, behind the scenes into Swift code and go looking at everything and go, oh, they added another layer of encryption. That's what I think they're going. It's probably a big finger of the FBI going, go ahead and encrypt this now.
Well, I think Apple will wait to WWDC. In June to really show their cards as far as what they're going to do as far as security, because that's going to be the developer conference. But I think if the proceedings go well for them against the FBI and they come out as the quote unquote victor, they're going to claim their victory in June. And I think they'll plant a flag, like you're saying, with real encryption that really doesn't allow anything. Because the truth is that encryption is based around algorithms and math, and the math is only going to get exponentially harder to crack over time because there's I think it's called quantum encryption, which is something that some of the biggest businesses in the world are already using. Yeah. And it's not a consumer level thing, but it soon will be. That's just how things work. And at some point, it's always encryption is always going to be a cat and mouse game type of thing. But at the end of and that's why that's why the FBI wants a backdoor, is because it is, other than having Apple write a specific firmware to allow access to these devices, there's really nothing the FBI can do. That being said, it's not like Apple's not giving any of your data over to the FBI. They're giving iCloud data. They're giving access to most devices.
Yeah.
It's just this particular case they did it for a specific reason.
Right. All right. The next one up, and we kind of spoke about this a little bit already. That when you're in the Apple Health app, it now will show you other third-party apps that can feed data into the Health app. And I think that's a good idea, too, because there are some pretty ingenious. I would use something called Argus, Argus. I took it off my phone recently, but I was playing with that. That had an interesting feature where you put your finger over the camera, and it told you what your blood pressure was.
Blood.
So it was using the camera, and it turned on the flashlight, too, so that you can see kind of, shine the light so it can get a reading and stuff like that. And then you could put in what you ate and what your activities did, and it kind of monitored all that. But it was with these, like, hexagon little tiles. You would just click on the tile for that day and click it, and they can kind of scroll through it. So it was a very interactive,
visual.
Fun way to see it. So with certain things like that, I'm not going to show you, obviously, my Health app because I have some privacy concerns. But I do come in here, like if I'm walking around the Disney parks, I will see, how far I walked or stuff like that. And I like to see that kind of data. And I keep some other stuff in here from some other third-party apps that are now, sources. But I think if you can find other things that, may help you monitor your health, I think is a good thing. So I think definitely. That was a smart decision because, my biggest complaint about the App Store and iTunes is once you say search for something, let's say I search for, walking apps. There's no way then to do a secondary sort on best reviews, most downloaded, cheapest, sort by price. None of those extra sorts are in the App Store or in iTunes.
By tech people or something like that.
Yeah, by anything.
Like you have it for Rotten Tomatoes and movies and all these things and restaurants and Yelp.
Yeah.
But for apps, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. So if they're going to show me at least the apps that pertain to that specific data that I'm looking for, well, that's great because right now I couldn't find the needle in the haystack if I wanted to. So I'm down with it,
Yeah, I mean, my biggest problem with the Health app is just that it's very data oriented, and it's very easy to get lost in the data. And that's something that I think is true of all tracking right now. And I think it's because we're at a very early stage. Right now, everybody's like, here's this new sensor, it reads this. Plug it into this, and you'll get this data. But the real transformations will be when the data really is in such a visual way that it captures people to do something with that data. So like the easiest example is the fitness apps that you see, motion activity and things of that nature with the Apple Watch, and obviously, with your iPhone, which has the motion code processor, and all these Samsung and all the high-end devices have nowadays. They try to surface it in a way like either with bars and graphs that look visually beautiful so that you have some enticement to come back. But I still think there's a gamification that video games do way better than some of these health apps do.
Sure.
And I think once those health apps realize, hey, we can get people addicted to being healthy, because that's really what you're trying to do, is you're trying to get people to come back, check that data constantly. I mean, there's a simple thing as constantly in every magazine you'll read is that if you check your weight once a day, you'll tend to lose weight in the year. And I've heard Ray Allen, who used to be a an NBA.
Just don't weigh yourself in McDonald's.
Yeah. So Ray Allen was an NBA, all-star and just an incredible player in the NBA. And he said he would, obviously he's an athlete, he would weigh himself 5 times a day so that he would know whether he should eat a lighter meal or a heavier meal for lunch or dinner or things of that nature. And obviously these people eat 6 meals a day and things like that. But what I'm trying to say is there has to be something to incentivize the average consumer who maybe isn't into fitness and who isn't into all these things to want to come back, to want to come check that data and not see it in a way that is boring. And so the dashboard that Apple Health presents is okay.
Yeah.
But I think that the third-party apps, at least at this point, do a far better job of communicating that data and making it more interesting. Like an example would be, let me see. I actually have a folder of health apps, which I need to see if I find. But basically, there's just so many running apps and things of that nature that they do a much better job of like, hey, keep it up. You did a good job this week. Whereas Apple doesn't do any of that stuff. They're just literally
don't they do that with the watch where they show you the little rings of
the activity meter and things of that nature?
Yeah. All right. The next item on the list is probably the most interesting to me. Is better CarPlay. And the reason it's interesting to me is because my lease is up in July, and I'm looking to buy a car, and one of the criteria of a car was it had to have Apple CarPlay. I figured, listen, if I'm going to go all in on the Apple ecosystem, what better way than with my damn car? Now, I currently have a Kia Forte, and here's the weird configuration I have in my car. My phone is Bluetooth connected to my car. So I hit my button and I can say, call this guy, call that guy, blah, 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 blah. But my music is via my iPod Touch hidden in my little compartment via USB. That's how I play my music. So I have 2 Apple devices in my car. One for phone and one for music. That makes no sense, right?
No, I mean, there's no doubt that car technology has been stuck in the Stone Ages for so long, and that's why the potential for, like you said, the next big thing to be the Apple Car. Just look at what Tesla's been able to do to reform. I mean, I had a friend of the family come into the house, and he was like, just his eyes were like so wide open. He's like, the whole dashboard is an iPad.
Yeah, exactly.
and it seems like it's such a simple little thing, but here were Ford and GM and all these companies, and they were stuck in their ways, and now they're really like trying to up their game quickly. I just don't know if they'll ever really truly keep up with the Googles, the Apples, because they have much more expertise in that scenario, and I just think that the car manufacturing aspect is something that you just hire the right talent and you'll be able to get really quickly. Whereas the tech part of it, the algorithms, the data that Google has taken, really puts them a step ahead. But with CarPlay, which is a much smaller thing, I just can't see a car not having CarPlay, not having Android Auto, in my next car. It just doesn't make any sense unless my next car is the Apple Car.
Yeah. So I'm looking at a. Actually, I have my info right here. I'm looking at the 2017 Hyundai Elantra, and all in with the ultimate tech package is under $30,000. And I mean, I am talking about some serious high tech CarPlay. Curve bending headlights, so when you go around a curve, the headlights will bend in that direction. Mm-hmm. Smart cruise control. So you set your distance and your pace, and the cruise control will keep distance and speed with the car in front of you. He speeds up, your car will speed up. Obviously to the speed you set. He slows down, your car will slow down. I mean, and tons more. We'll do a whole show on my car. We'll have to actually maybe do a video from the car, talk about the CarPlay and all that kind of stuff. But you know, and it was funny because one of the dealers called me today. Well, you really want the old? I said. She goes, what in the ultimate package do you want? I said, well, all of it. What are you gonna take pieces out, lady? No, I want all of it. So I'm really looking for the complete. I mean, you can send and receive text messages from the dashboard. My only concern is that I'll have to use Apple Maps, because once you connect your phone, that will be the maps of choice. I don't think you can say, well, use Google Maps instead. It's you want to use those maps. So I don't know. Okay.
So you were saying that you didn't know about Android, like if you can switch back between Android Auto and CarPlay?
Well, not that. I think the maps. Once you choose like Apple Maps, I don't think you can say, well, use Google Maps rather than Apple Maps. I think if you're using CarPlay, you're using Apple Maps, and that's it. You're screwed.
Yeah, so that's my biggest problem with CarPlay right now is that you're basically tied to whatever Apple has selected that you could use. Whereas with my phone, I get everything I want.
Yeah.
And that's my one gripe with CarPlay at the moment. But it's not like I can. If I have CarPlay in my car, I still don't have my phone. So I could always. Obviously, the best thing would be that Apple would open it up and allow every developer to be in there. But that doesn't seem to be Apple's goal here with CarPlay. Because honestly, I just don't think. I think right now they want to control the whole entire experience, and that's what they're doing, which is not good for the consumer. I think Apple Maps is getting better, but nowhere near Google Maps. Mm-hmm. But I just think that's the lay of the land, which is why if I did get another car right now, I would make sure that it had both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which most luckily do.
Yeah, the Hyundai does.
But I would definitely go that route because I don't want to be tied into one vendor. Even though I personally don't see Android as the device to choose in the coming years, except for the fact that they tend to be cheaper.
Yeah.
I just don't want to be tied in because you never know where the next big thing is coming from. You really don't know whether it'll be an Android device, a Microsoft device. You really don't know until it's here.
Yeah. And the car has built-in nav too, so I'm assuming that I can say I use the in-dash nav system rather than the CarPlay and the Apple Maps too. And the other thing, worst case, is I'm sure I could just put it up on my dash or whatever, and pull up Google Maps and start running Google Maps without going through my dashboard and the whole CarPlay bit too. So I'm sure if there's a will, there's a way around it. You know what I'm saying? So, all right. You want to talk about the next thing, Raph?
iOS education, just a simple thing, which is that obviously Apple's looking for different ways to sell the iPad. That's one area where Android is winning, I think, which is that selling high-end iPads seemed like a good idea for schools, and then there's been a lot of revolts in different schools, whether it be in California or things of that nature, because people realized that the price tags for these iPads in schools, for the programs for putting iPads in schools, was just ridiculously expensive. So they've kind of created new apps and new things that I haven't quite been able to delve into, but I do know that they added an ability to share an iPad so that kids, maybe let's say they come in for science and at 7 o'clock in the morning, they can use the iPad then. And then the new class comes into science at 9, can use that same iPad and sign in and have their stuff hopefully encrypted, and stored away with Touch ID, right?
Yeah.
But I'm being facetious, but the truth is that's the idea is to use these devices with multiple users so that the cost will come down. Not because you can now buy these high-end devices, but use it amongst various students. So I do think that's a good idea, and I think it's a smart idea. The reason I say that they're losing in there is because Chrome OS, while not the most powerful thing in the world, has been a very cheap. Chromebooks are so cheap,
sure.
and it's being very highly adopted by education because it's just very simple. And if you lose it, it's all stored in the cloud, and and you just get a new Chromebook and that's it. So it's been a very good thing for schools. That being said, Google, Apple, and even to some extent Microsoft will always be at war in education.
Yeah.
And I think everything that these tech companies can do to help improve education is a good thing because let's face it, most public schools are still stuck in a weird past education model.
Yeah. And I know the Apple stores, when you go into an Apple store and you play with an iPhone or an iPad or something like that, I know at the end of the night, those get wiped and reset back to, the state they're supposed to be in for the next day. I'm sure they could do something like that for, education programs. So once the day is over, they dock them all. And then they can, reset them back to, the normal state for the next day. In case, some kid does something wonky to one, at least the teacher would have a way to, set it back to its original state without, an IT tech staff going, hey, somebody did something to this, They have to make that kind of stuff easy because, teachers aren't, IT departments.
Yeah, no.
So. All right, moving on to the last interesting item that Apple announced was stuff about the Apple Watch. So they have new bands with a woven nylon in colors. They're durable nylon with that's a fabric feel in 7 vibrant colors, and they lowered the price down. Well, for the starting price on one of the watches down to $299. Not all of them. It's probably the 38 millimeter Sport is now down to $299. I don't know if that's compelling enough for me to go out and get one yet. I'm looking for version 2 of the Apple Watch.
Well, as an Apple Watch wearer, I'll be the first one to tell you that if you've waited this long to get the Apple Watch, do not buy it now.
Yeah, see?
Do not buy it now. Wait until the next one comes out because there's a lot of people that held off, like Tony.
Yep.
And, and there's people that went ahead and bought the first generation like me. So I'm telling myself constantly, I made the right choice by going ahead and buying the first one.
Yeah.
Tony's going to come in, get the next one that's going to have all the features. He's going to go, I was right to wait. and I think in this case, both of us actually will be right because the period between the first Apple Watch being released and the second one being released is now been extended because if it was in a natural 1-year cycle that Apple likes to be in, it would have released now. But for whatever reason, Apple is rumored to have delayed it till the fall, probably to coincide. Because I do think that it's just smarter to market this as a back to school and also a Christmas gift.
Sure.
So I think in the minds of consumers, if you put it out like they did in spring, it could have that negative effect of not selling as much. The original iPad was introduced as a spring event as well, and that sold pretty well. But I think with the iPad, it was much more clear, and Apple did a much better job of defining why an iPad was important. I mean, I can still remember Steve Jobs giving that, not that interview, the press conference, and him sitting in that chair with the iPad reading, and everybody instantly looking at their tiny little screen goes, I want that, right? Or at least you could envision why you would want it. With the Apple Watch, I knew why I wanted it from day one because I wanted notifications not to be on my just on my phone and hammering me all the time, but on my wrist where I can triage them a little bit easier. And I still, to this day, that's the number one reason to get a watch is to have the time, but secondly, to triage your notifications much because I actually now have it so that only the most important things come to my wrist, but some things actually just stay on the iPhone, and I'll actually read both. So I'll read the notifications as they come in, the most important ones. The other stuff, I just leave it for the end of the day, and I kind of do a quick summary, and I see the rest of the stuff that I think is important, but I don't check every day.
Yeah.
And I think that way the Apple Watch is an accessory, and I think a lot of people, and Apple included, try to market it as the next coming device, and it could be because what the Apple Watch does amazingly well is that it separates you from the iPhone. It allows you some freedom. And the problem with the Apple Watch is that it doesn't allow you enough freedom because the Apple Watch it doesn't have a fast enough processor yet. And the battery life is very good, actually, compared to what Apple had been. People were worried that it wouldn't make it through a day.
Yeah.
It does make it through a day. And actually, if you're pretty good on not checking it as much, it could make it in through like a day and a half. But the thing is that it's just a little underpowered. So when you go to use it, and you go to load apps, it's just a little slow. And since we have all these high-end iPhones, we're used to everything just opening up so quickly that we don't forgive it as easily as we may have had this been the iPhone 3G,
Yeah.
But now we expect everything to be blazing fast. And if it's not, you're just going to pull out your phone. So I think this next watch has the potential to fix all those little gripes. So right now, even at the $299 price point, it just doesn't make sense to me. One last thing, and I know I've talked a lot about the Apple Watch, is that this price is not really new. If you looked at Black Friday, this was like the going price for the Apple Watch, and maybe it might have even been lower. I'm not quite sure. Obviously, not a starting price, but Apple really discounted through Best Buy and through other dealers on Black Friday Apple Watch, which I think was a sign that they weren't selling as much as they would like.
Yeah, I think they're having trouble selling this watch.
But I also told my mother, I was like, they're gonna drop the price on this Apple Watch by $50 because they did the same thing with the iPad. The original iPad came out, and then the iPad 2 came for $50 less than the original iPad, because they're trying to. I mean, I'm sure they're trying to hit margin marks. I don't know how Apple does this. I wish I did, because maybe I'd be wealthier. But Apple, definitely knows the number they're trying to hit. And I think always the first generation, they try to eke out a little extra from the early adopters who they know are not as price conscious. But now they want to get that larger market. So that's why you're starting to see that with the lower price point. And I think in the fall,
Well, I think they're also prepping us for version 2.
Yeah. But I wouldn't be shocked if the version 2 comes out at this $299 price.
Yeah. And this will probably go down to something else too. $279 or whatever. Yeah. So the bands, were interesting. They weren't, anything I'd write home about.
No, definitely not.
I
have one band and one band only.
I've heard people talk too about the Apple Watch. When it first came out, one of the things is kind of goes off. It's supposed to be a watch. It's supposed to have the time on it.
You have to tap it, or you have to.
Yeah, you have to tap it, or do something to wake up the watch. Yeah.
That's something that and what shocks me there is that it's an OLED screen.
Yeah.
It's the first OLED Apple device, as far as I know.
Yeah. I mean, they can use low power to power that, and still probably keep the battery life, and at least it would be a watch that would be on, that would have the time.
Apple is so worried about user experience, and let's face it, they do a great job on the iPad, on the iPhone with battery, but I think they overplayed how important it was to make it through a day with the Apple Watch, because even if I had to charge my Apple Watch, like let's say at night before going out or before dinner or while I'm cooking dinner or something of that nature, but I got a more powerful device, I would have definitely taken that versus what we have today, which feels like a very good device, but at the same time it feels lacking. And I think a lot of even the speed stuff, I think is not necessarily the processor, although I think a better processor will help. I think it's because Apple clocked these things at a lower rate in order to save on battery.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Well, I'll wait for version 2. It's on my list. I'm looking for an Apple Watch.
Oh, I think
so.
You'll be very
Steve Cook, please hurry up. Or Tim Cook. Tim Cook, please hurry up.
Steve Cook, I like it.
Yeah, Tim Cook, please hurry up. Actually, I had a friend named Steve Cook. He's probably not listening to that. All right, so we have one last section, and it's the Real Tech Pick. And I think Raf's got a pick for this week.
Yeah, so I actually, since we're on almost a total iOS, an Apple theme here today, which is not going to be the way the show goes going forward. We're going to talk more about just in general devices and the tech world. But today, being the Apple press conference, we wanted to go ahead and start off with a special kind of show today. But so in that vein, I wanted to pick something from iOS, and it's called Lumi, Lumy. And what Lumi does is it tracks photographic times, which basically means that it kind of helps you find that quote-unquote magic hour, which is what people, it's basically sunset and sunrise in layman's terms. And I didn't know, I just got into photography over the last few years as I started a news website. And Tony, you and I both talk about taking photos all the time.
Yeah.
But I just literally recently just started learning the basics of true photography, which is using the light around you and using light to improve your photos. And I thought it to be counterintuitive, actually. I thought, because your eyes need light to see, that you would want the most amount of light in your photos. So I thought the best time would be noon, which now I know is the opposite of what you want.
Right.
Because that is the harshest light, and you want nice soft light on your subjects in most instances. So the nice natural soft light comes at sunrise and sunset. And of course, you could always go, hey, Apple Watch, what time is sunrise? What time is sunset? And I actually use that sometimes before going out to go take a photo. But this app, what it does is it allows you, and I'll try to show it to you. And it also is
so while
Watch.
you're pulling that up, did you see the movie Reverend?
No, I haven't.
Okay. The movie Reverend was shot with no external lighting.
Wow.
It was only shot in those magic hours.
That's awesome.
In natural light. They did it, at sunset, dusk, whatever. And they shot it in the morning, and then they shot it again at night, and that was it. They used no external lighting to, make fake, lighting for the movie.
So I don't know if this will come out on the video, and for those of you listening on the audio, basically you get a listing from top to bottom of morning magic hour to sunrise, and then evening magic hour and sunset. And on the app, on the Apple Watch is very similar to the one on the phone. The one on the phone also gives you some weather data as well, so you can actually look at the week ahead and kind of get an idea for when you would want to go and take your photography. But I love the idea that, and you could also set up notifications. So if you know that day you really are interested in knowing precisely the right hours, and you don't want to be thinking about it, this is a great app to just have you notified, hey, here's the beginning of the magic hour, and just it keeps you aware. And honestly, it's such a simple little detail that even a novice photographer should add this into their repertoire. And an app like this, it's not very expensive. It's very beautiful, by the way. It's very simple, very clean app. And it's a very simple thing to have it on your wrist or have it on your phone and just pull it out and know that you're going to be taking some better photography just by having better light. Yeah. And it really does make a difference. And I think you just look at this press conference was a little bit different in that sense. But when we get to the iPhone 7 launch, they're going to be talking about cameras for at least 30 to 40 minutes on stage,
sure.
Because that's what sells modern cell phones. And so we're all becoming photographers in some sense. And I just think any small little thing like this that can improve your photography is a great thing.
Yeah, that app is only half useful for me because I wouldn't get up at 7 o'clock in the morning and take a picture.
Yeah. Oh, I only use it at sunset hour too.
There's no way you'd catch me up at 7 o'clock in the morning outside taking pictures. I'm not a morning person. Actually, it's funny because tomorrow I have to be at the courthouse for jury duty at 8. And when I looked at the nose, I'm going, what the hell are these people crazy? Who wants to get up this early?
Yeah, right.
8 o'clock, I have to be there? That means I got to get up and I got to shower and eat and drive on I-4 at 7 o'clock in the morning. Oh, my God. I'm not looking forward to it. All right, let's wrap up this show as long as it is.
On behalf of Tony and Raphael, we hope you've enjoyed the Real Tech Podcast and hope that you will join them next week where they will begin to dive into some of the gadgets they are currently using with tips and advice that may help you with your tech lifestyle.